An exceptionally important skill when having difficult conversations or honestly interacting with humans in general is being able to recognize what your triggers are, maybe what's triggering them, and then being able to de-escalate or defuse that. So we're going to dive into that today. We're going to look at 4 different common triggers, and we're going to talk about different ways that you can de-escalate as well. To diffuse a tense situation, we first need to understand what sparked it, what's making this fire, what's making us feel heated. And when you understand those triggers more, it allows us to respond more thoughtfully instead of reacting in the heat of the moment. I'm going to go over those 4 common triggers, how they show up, some examples, and then how we can deal with them. And while we're doing this, notice which ones do you identify with? Which ones come up for you? Which ones come up for other people? Let's jump into the first one. Identity triggers. So these are ones that challenge our self-worth, our competence, our values. And when that identity is triggered, our defenses go up very quickly. And some examples of this are being told you did something wrong or you made a mistake, feeling that your expertise or your intelligence is being questioned, criticism that maybe feels more personal instead of constructive, or even just being misunderstood or having your actions be misunderstood or misconstrued. But there's hope, don't worry. These are 2 ways I like to think about managing that. So when you notice that this is happening, let's say your work is being criticized. They're saying, oh, this wasn't great, blah, blah, blah. Separate it. So pause, take a breath, pause, and realize that they are commenting on your work. Your work is not you. They are criticizing just your work, and this is a moment that you can get some feedback and improve and grow. And then another important thing is to seek clarity. So when they give you this feedback, instead of just assuming, oh, well, that means they think I'm terrible, ask more questions, seek clarity, ask a bunch of follow-up questions to make sure you're really understanding the feedback in its entirety. This then turns that conversation into something constructive instead of something that's heated. The next one are emotional triggers. This usually stems from past experiences and places where strong emotions were present. And maybe there's a little bit of overlap with the current topic that's happening. It's sort of like an old wound is being reopened in this new situation. Some examples of this would be this situation is reminding you very much of a past experience that you had. Maybe the person is using a tone or body language that feels really aggressive for the moment. Or maybe even just the stakes feel really high. You feel like there's a lot of pressure on you and you feel kind of panicked about what's happening. But don't worry, I have 3 ideas for you. 1, pause and notice your emotions. Take a second, take a breath, pause and notice, ooh, what am I feeling? What is this feeling that I'm having? Name that feeling. Acknowledge that emotion without judgment. Just name what that emotion is. Then I like to use self-talk, and this can just be in your head, saying something like, you are very capable, you're going to handle this, you've handled things like this before. This experience is not that past experience. This is a new experience with a new person. And then if needed, and this I find more so for personal interactions, but it could be professionally as well, take a break. If need be, if things are heated and you're both feeling emotionally triggered, say, you know what? Let's take 15 minutes, let's come back to this, let's go for a walk, let's do something else and come back and reconvene, or reconvene tomorrow. Let's both think about how we want to move forward and then connect again. The third one is power and control triggers. And these triggers are attached to status, authority, autonomy. When we feel like our influence or our decision-making power is being brought into question, that can put our back up. Examples of this can be simple. It can be a small thing like being interrupted, or maybe you've put some input in on something and it's just dismissed. It could be that someone is micromanaging you, whether it's your partner or a manager, they're micromanaging and it feels like they're not trusting that you can get this done. Or it can even be a decision was made without you that you felt you should have been a part of. I find these 2 ways work really well when this is the trigger that's happening. 1, as always, take a breath, but assert yourself calmly. Let's say someone is interrupting you. I like to physically hold up a hand to show them a pause or a stop. Oh, I would just like to finish my thought first. Or let me just quickly finish this and then we can certainly move on. And then use I statements. So instead of saying you did this and being accusatory, say something like, oh, hey, I feel unheard when I'm interrupted. So if you wouldn't mind just letting me quickly finish this. Oh, sorry, I want to get this out and make sure that you hear it. Let's take turns speaking. You want to be trying to say what the experience is without blaming. Something like, I felt overlooked when X happened, instead of saying something like, you never listen to me, you ignore me. Say what that experience is for you instead. The 4th and final one is fairness trigger. So this has to do with equity and respect. If we perceive that we're getting unfair treatment, our sense of justice can sort of activate. And examples of this would be when we see someone else being treated differently than us. You know, there's one set of rules for them, another set of rules for me. Well, that doesn't seem fair. Let's all be on the same page. When the expectations maybe are changing often. You think that they're this, but then they change and they change again and they change again. Well, we're not mind readers. How are we supposed to know? Or when someone's not taking responsibility for something, when they're shifting the blame, blaming other people for something that happened with them, also not fair. I definitely fall under the area of fall on the sword. When I screw up, I'm going to say, hey, I messed up, I'm human. How do we fix this? And how I would suggest managing this to make sure that it doesn't turn into a more difficult conversation are these two things. Ask fact-based questions. Try to find out how this decision was made. What was the rationale that they had in their mind? And this allows you to see if that fairness is perceived or real. And it can be as simple as saying, oh, can you help me understand how that decision was made, or walk me through the process of how that decision was made? And going hand in hand with that is that expressing concerns directly. Share your observations about that inconsistency. Maybe they're unaware that it's happening. Maybe it's some kind of bias that's coming up. You don't want to be accusatory. I noticed blank. Can you help me understand that? You're coming in it thinking, oh, maybe I'm missing something. Can you help me understand it? So here we have the 4 triggers that we've covered today. There, of course, are a lot more, but these are the 4 that I see coming up the most. Identity, emotional, power and control, and fairness. What I suggest is that you figure out which strategies work for you, figure out which triggers you have happening the most for you, and figure out how you can de-escalate yourself and get yourself under control. Maybe that's taking a breath, maybe it's taking a pause, maybe it's checking what emotions are happening for you. But then also being able to recognize those triggers in other people. And again, I think the best way to start to do that is when you're on larger calls, if you do sense there's tension happening, try to think about, oh, which trigger is that? Okay, what could this person have done in order to make this better? So now that we've recognized what those triggers are, let's go over some de-escalation techniques. I'm going to share 2 with you. Once you've calmed yourself, these are 2 that I highly suggest. Nonviolent communication is the first one. This one, I think, applies more so to personal relationships than professional, but you could certainly think about it as well. And it's when emotions are very high, this is the one that I would go to. So these are the 4 steps that you would use when you want to bring something up. So let's say something difficult is happening and you want to talk to this person about it. These are the 4 pieces that I would bring up to them. The first is observation. What did you see or hear? But say it without judgment or interpretation. These are the facts of what happened. 2 are the feelings. Tell them how this made you feel and use the emotion words. The next is needs. Let them know what need is not being met. Maybe it's clarity or respect or autonomy. And then finally, finish it off with a request. Make a specific, actionable request to help with that need. An example would be, hey, you keep interrupting me and it's making me feel a little frustrated. I'd really love us to take turns speaking just so we can both get everything out to make sure that we're really understanding each other. This other framework is SBI, and this one I find really helpful in business situations. This one's especially good if you were doing feedback. Let's say there's someone on your team, or it could even be a spouse, but let's keep it professional in this case. You're giving feedback on something that's just not working well within your team. This is the framework that I like to use. And it's situation, behavior, and impact. And it's a really objective way to give someone feedback. And that's the thing with any of this, you want to be objective about it and take as much emotion out of it as possible. So the first one is the situation. What happened? Describe it, and describe it factually. You want to stay away from criticism and just state the facts as they are. When and where were you when this behavior happened? Give it that context. Something like, in yesterday's meeting, and then there's a behavior. What was their behavior? But keep it neutral and specific. You interrupted Rebecca several times. Factual. It's just a fact of what happened. And then finally, the impact, the effect that had. Because of that, people weren't able to hear what Rebecca was saying. It got confusing because she was getting cut off a few times and she wasn't able to finish her thoughts. And so it was hard for the team to follow and hard for Rebecca to get out what she wanted to say. I highly suggest you pause here and write down an example that you can think of. Think about some feedback that maybe you'd like to give to someone, or maybe some feedback that you got and you wish that it had been done in this way. Pause it right now and write that down for yourself. What was the situation? What was the behavior? And what was the impact? In the meeting yesterday, you interrupted Rebecca multiple times, and it made it difficult for us to follow what Rebecca was talking about. All right, so now you have your 4 triggers and you have 2 different de-escalation techniques to think about, as well as some other ideas on how to sense the triggers in yourself and how to calm yourself. Now we're going to move into active listening and empathy in the next video.